Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to Let's Talk About It, Steph. I am your host, Stephanie, and we got some great things to talk about tonight. I have two guests on tonight. I have TJ Ware, who is running for Congressional District 24, and I also have Jay Gordon, who is running for Congressional District 17. So we're going to have a lot to talk about tonight, especially what's going on down in Houston. And also we're going to talk about the what's going on in Tarrant County with them losing their voting locations. So we're going to hop on in and get to talking about what's going on. So I hope y'all are having a wonderful Wednesday, of course. Shout out to me. I think I lost my guess. Hold tight, folks. Well, let's see. All right, there we go. Okay, so y'all, we're gonna bring up our guest today, and y'all be nice, okay? Because you know how to behave, right? We're gonna clap, and if y'all have comments, please put your comments in. And if you're on YouTube watching us live, please make sure you subscribe and share so we can get the word out. And thank y'all for watching. Let's talk about it, Steph. And here we go. We have Mr. TJ Ware. And of course, we can't go without saying hello to Mr. Jay Gordon. He is running for District 17. So we got a lot to talk. I know he's gonna be a little messy today, but we got a lot to talk about. Welcome aboard. Jay Gordon, I'll put you up first to talk about who you are, why are you running,
Well,
and whatever
first,
you
yeah,
do.
thank you for having me on tonight. TJ, good to see you. Really looking forward to following your campaign as well, my friend. Let me know if there's anything that we can work on together to get that word out to the constituents, right? Um,
Definitely.
so, a little bit about me. I'm a 27-year Air Force veteran. I served a little under 5 years as a drill sergeant, then moved into a senior enlisted advisor role. And then my last assignment was a senior mission planner for Joint Task Force Texas during COVID. And what we did was we provided COVID testing, COVID vaccinations, as well as food bank support throughout the state of Texas. So before all of that, I was a firefighter for the Air Force. And if you go back to basically every major disaster in Texas going back to 2011 in the Bastrop fires, I have been on the ground, boots on the ground, first line response for all of them. Bastrop fires, Hurricane Harvey, most recently the devastating floods in Kerrville. I was there as well. And so I've also served 2 terms on a school board, one of the fastest growing districts in the nation. I left that service in 2021. And I thought I was done with politics until Trump's 2.0 and the things that are happening in the United States. And I will tell you, I did not serve 27 years in the military to come home and watch my neighbors being disappeared off the streets in broad daylight. I did not serve 27 years to watch kids go hungry, to watch kids die in mass shootings in schools, to watch Medicare get stripped away from people that rely on it, right? All of these things. And so I decided I need to come out of retirement and start asking some hard questions. So that's what I'm hoping to do. People say I'm running for office. I will be running against Pete Sessions. And really, what I like to tell people is I'm just trying to plan his retirement party. So,
Okay. What a retirement party that would be, because we need some fresh blood with great ideas in there that think about all the people that we have in this great state of Texas. So, with that being said, TJ Ware, we're going to bring you on up and you can let the folks know who you are and why are you running, because you, sir, got a very hard district that just got redistricted.
Well, thank you, Stephanie, and thanks, Jay. I was actually down in Kerrville recently as well. I do a lot of national disaster response and disaster relief. So I've done like 7 hurricanes, and well, that's part of the reason I been doing some policy work in Washington for about the past 5 years, having to do with FEMA funding. Like I was on Capitol Hill in December fighting to restore the funding for the disaster aid through FEMA. And also writing policy and dealing with insurance companies that take advantage of consumers, of their own policyholders. So we work with attorneys general all over the country to try to hold insurance companies criminally liable when they commit fraud against their own policyholders. And I had gotten to where, I haven't worked a lot in the last couple of years. I do mostly nonprofit work. I own a couple of businesses here in Dallas, Fort Worth. And this wasn't really on my radar, but I'm a Marine. I was in Iraq in 2004, and the oath that I took to this country and the Constitution I take very seriously. And I'm very unhappy with a lot of the things that have been going on in this administration and with some of the ideology that stands behind it. So I looked around and I found myself to be the most capable person I could find to run. And my district, I'm not that worried about my district, to be honest with you. Now, my opponent is a very good politician in the sense that she has a good relationship with her base and her donor base. But the rest of the constituents constantly complain about a lack of care or communication. Plus, she is just an extension of MAGA. So essentially, like a lot of us here, we're running against Trump in the midterms, even though Trump isn't really running against us.
Finally, somebody said it like it is. Yeah, that is true. Anybody that's running in 2026, you are actually running against Trump and the MAGA. So it's not even, we can might as well just not even say anything about the GOP, because the GOP is in a coma right now
Hmm.
and the MAGA is taking over. I have, out of my 50 years plus being on this earth, I have never, ever seen anything so distasteful, so unhumane in this United States. I've always told people, my husband, he served in the military. I have a child that is active duty right now. And I'm like, how do you keep your oath when you have somebody like that that's literally making you do things that you don't want to do? So both of y'all, sir, how do you feel about that?
Well, like I said, 27 years wearing the fabric of our nation, right? I think back to the thousands of troops that I took from civilian into airman warrior of character, and I don't know what they're going to do, right? I know that recruitment and retention is through the floor right now,
Yeah.
and that's a direct result of these policies. I do have a lot of communication with some of my former troops, and I tell them, you have to remember the Uniform Code of Military Justice, in particular, Article 92, that you will follow lawful orders, but Manual of Courts Martial also says that it is incumbent upon military members to not follow unlawful orders. Following an order simply because it was given to you by a superior officer, if you know that that order is unlawful or unconstitutional, you are duty bound to disregard that order and to not follow it. And so you can't have it, and this goes all the way back to the Nuremberg trials, right? You can't say, "Well, I was just following orders." That's no longer an excuse. So, um, but I also understand, a lot of these younger folks just coming into the military. They may have young families. They're getting their feet under them, getting their careers under them, and they're not really given to standing up to the authority figures, over them and say, "No, sir, no, ma'am, I'm not going to do that because it's unconstitutional." Um, so they're in a very bad position, as far as I'm concerned, and all we can do is pray that they are surrounded by good people that remind them of what their oath is. It is not to Donald Trump. It is not to an administration. It is to the Constitution of the United States. And so, as TJ said, that's something we take very serious.
And I like read from the people that have spent their time around Trump, like General Mattis and Mr. Kelly. They have gone on record talking about Trump's belief system when it comes to the military, Trump's inability to understand the idea of service or sacrifice. And this is stuff that most of us, I felt like we knew, but we're fighting a media war here, and the left has been severely outmaneuvered by the right, and they push a nationalistic message, but it is not a message representative of the America that the three of us here embrace and love so much. So it is hard to see this happen, but we know that Donald Trump idolizes strong men around the world, whether it was Duterte, Putin, Viktor Orban. There are other playbooks that Donald Trump is very clearly following. And I hate to admit that when we talk about comparisons between what's going on now in America and 1930s Germany, it's not hyperbole. I wish it were. But people try to push back and say, we don't see anybody getting killed. Well, in 1935, nobody was getting killed like that. Nobody was being loaded onto trains, and I don't think the extermination camps were even built yet. But what they did do in 1935 was denaturalize the Jews so that they lost their rights. And so what we see is an administration that wants to denaturalize American citizens. They have no respect for the rule of law. And for people to not be pushing back against the direction this is going is very concerning. And it ties into some other important issues like education and civics and even good, sound, ethical, moral leadership in our country.
I have to agree with both of y'all on those questions. I mean, I'm with you, Jay, when it comes down to our soldiers, especially our young ones, that I hope that we have the elders soldiers there that could kind of like wrap their arms around them, in a figure of speech, to guide them and tell them, hey, it's okay, this is what we got to do, So I'm hoping they got some people that are mature enough to make sure that they explain to them what's going on, because I'm quite sure a lot of them, just the ones that especially just graduated college, not college, high school, and they're probably a little worried about, wait a minute, why are we doing this? Are we getting ready to, you sending us to DC and we're having guns against our people? It's almost like Katrina all over again. And I don't know if y'all have watched the show about Katrina. I was like, oh my God. I knew it was bad. I'm from Louisiana and I knew it was bad, but I had no idea how much torture they were going through, and especially calling our United States citizens refugees. I hated that word. I'm like, why are y'all calling them that? Why are y'all shooting at them? Why are you aiming your guns at them? I had a lot of issues with that, and I'm like, and now here we are in 2025, and it looks like we're going through the same thing again. And here, what happened down there in Kerrville, they're not they're not receiving the help that they need. I'm like, wait a minute, this is Texas. Why are we not making sure that those folks are taken care of first? It doesn't matter what color they are, what they believe in, or whatever. I don't care about that. Why are y'all not taking care of those folks? And why did y'all not make sure that they had the equipment that they need? So that's something that the local people, that's in management or the council, they need to be held accountable for that, instead of you putting the money where it belongs. I don't know what you did with the money, but it didn't go where it was supposed to go. So I have issues with that.
So it was widely reported that the Biden administration actually did provide the funding so that they could have the early warning systems and all of the things, right? Um,
Hmm.
but then politics took over, and the Republicans did not want to accept this money from a Democrat, so they literally sent it back. And one of the most disgusting things that I saw when I was down there, and the floodwaters, they crested in the middle of the night on July 4th. 8 a.m. July 5th, I was in the water. I was there in the water. Um, and it was, we hadn't even recovered the victims. And people are standing at podiums and they're pointing fingers and playing the blame game. And it was absolutely disgusting. And if I had any thoughts about whether or not I really wanted to run for this position, that solidified it for me. We have not recovered the dead, and people are politicizing this and playing the blame game. And you fast forward to today and what's going on at the Texas Capitol, and this argument that the Democrats are holding up this flood relief, and that is just patently false. Governor Abbott at any point could have issued an executive order. He's done
Hmm.
it. He's done it for COVID. He has done it for the ice apocalypse. He has done it for any number of emergencies. And I know that because I've been on the ground in those emergencies. I know that because I was a senior mission planner for Abbott when I was part of Joint Task Force Texas. I know how the star requests work. I know how the executive orders work. And so, for any side to say, "Oh well, it's the Dems, holding this process up," it is just so disingenuous as to be just an obscenity. And we really need to start calling people out and
Yeah.
say it's time to quit playing politics. We can have ideological conversations at some point in the future, but right now people are homeless.
Right.
People don't know where their next meal is going to come from. People are still waiting to try to put their lives back together after these devastating floods. Um, Show some humanity and issue an executive order. Fix what needs fixing right now, and then we can have other conversations later. But to hold this hostage, to get this gerrymandered scam pushed through, is it's just an obscenity.
I agree. I agree because my heart goes out to those folks down there. I'm like, it's been what, a good month and a half, and they still don't have the necessary things that they need. HEB, the grocery store was
No,
one of the first ones on the ground. They beat FEMA down there, and I'm like, it needs to be a lot more being said about that, instead of them talking about this redistricting bullcrap. Might as well call it what it is, because it's bullshit. Why
it
are
is.
you redistricting in the middle of the dang on century? Why are you doing that? It makes no sense, because you have the orange man sitting up here telling you what to do. This is freaking Texas. We don't take orders like that. We basically
Apparently we
can
do
be
not.
our own country. Right?
They could have moved the legislative agenda to push the flood relief to the front, and so we know what they're there for. But when it comes to the deceptive messaging, Jay, one thing I wanted to say is that when I was on Capitol Hill in December fighting to replenish the funds for FEMA, I was in the Senate and I was in the House, and it was Republicans that were holding up the FEMA funds, and we went around to all Democrats and we tried to rally everyone together and we tried to approach some Republicans, but the Republicans were the one blocking it. And then they would go outside on the Capitol steps and tell the press and tell the American people that Joe Biden doesn't want to fund FEMA. And it was just pure lies and deception. And that relates to a certain thing. Like, I have some proposed legislation that I've been working on called the Truth in Government Act, which would make it a crime for an elected or appointed federal official to knowingly and willfully lie to and or deceive the American people outside of some certain national security exceptions. And why is that not a law on the books already? It's now it has become the precedent where the party power goes up there. They look at everything like a zero sum game. They don't care about the rules or the laws, and they just lie straight to the American people. And it hurts the American people because when I was in Center Point, Texas, where some houses had gotten flooded out, I was meeting with a Marine Corps veteran, and he was so scared or angry at FEMA that he talked about getting his guns out if he showed up. And I was so heartbroken by this because his neighbor 2 houses down, she works for the Veterans Administration, which is just another federal agency. But the rhetoric and the nasty, divisive narrative that has been coming from the right has done so much to hurt people on the right and the left in this country.
Yep. And you make a great point, TJ. Um, I have been saying, as James Tallarico and Gina Hinojosa and Greg Casar and the rest of them, um, they've all been saying the same thing, right? This is no longer right versus left. This is no longer Republican versus Democrat, right?
Right.
This is the working class versus the billionaire class, and
Mhm.
as long as the and both parties are guilty of this at the national level, right? The
Yeah.
more that they can keep us fighting with each other, um, the more that they get to hang on to power, and
Exactly.
and the
Right.
wealth gets transferred up to the top. So um, that is one of the things. And I have actually on social media, I've actually been reaching out to people that frequent Republican pages or make it known that they're Republican and they're coming to give me what for on my page. I'll have a conversation with them and say, you know what, if we agree on anything, then we need to understand that it is not you're not my enemy and I'm not your enemy, right?
Right.
Our neighbors are not our enemy. Black and brown people trying to provide a nice life for their family and raise a family, they're not our enemies, right? Um,
Right.
Homeless people, people dealing with mental health issues, those are not our enemies. The billionaire class is our enemy. Um, yeah, and I'm looking at the person that I'm running against, and his stated net worth. He puts this out publicly. Here's what his net worth is. And someone said, "Well, okay, what does that mean to all of us?" An average teacher in the state of Texas would have to work for 167 years to make as much money as the person I'm running against has as a net worth right now. That is just again, I keep using the word obscene, but it is an obscenity that we have people with that type of net worth that can't be bothered to show up when their constituents are getting disappeared off the streets, right? Um, I live down in Round Rock. I've been to Waco 6 or 7 times in the last 3 weeks, and half of those have been for protests when one of our neighbors, one of our constituents, have been disappeared off the street in broad daylight. Pete Sessions, nowhere to be found.
Mhm.
We ask him questions, he refuses to answer. So I'm going to run against him, and if nothing else, we're going to have a conversation, right?
See, that is why you're on this show, so everyone can meet you, and they can get a chance to say, "Hey, I like this guy. I see what he stands for." And that's the biggest thing right there. And let's just be real, y'all. The people who we have down there in Austin, especially the GOP, they're a bunch of bullies. Number one, and they're a bunch of cowards. I have never seen so many cowards that will take a knee to what's going on. And they know, some of them, especially the ones that are responsible for the rural areas, y'all know you need certain things. You need to be taking care of your people, especially with the hospitals are shutting down. They don't have enough schools that's down there. They don't have enough teachers are leaving in droves because they don't want to be in those schools. And now, of course, let me go and throw this up. I'm glad that the judge had blocked the 10th commandment. That was another thing. So it's like they're doing stupid stuff and you adding more stress to the people instead of taking away the stress. And it makes no sense whatsoever. So
I
I
agree.
hope you guys go in there and change some things up because we need new blood. And I'm sorry, if you're a GOP, the old GOP, y'all need to get off y'all ass and kick them MAGAs out your camp because y'all are looking real crazy. Now I know on the Democrat side, we got some issues. It's just like a family. We always gonna have some issues, but at the end of the day, we're gonna come together and do what we gotta do. Now we might have one that might do something a little bit different and don't stick to the plan, but at the utmost, we normally come together and do what's right for the people, and we care about the people because the people matter. That's not Greg Abbott's job to fire somebody that's in the house. That is the people's responsibility to do that. Now, if they did something like, let's see, take money, bribery, and all this other stuff, extramarital things that's happening, I'm not going to bring up no names, but you know who I'm talking about. You know, run away when there's a disaster going on, don't know where you're at. Now, those are the people that you need to be sitting up there holding accountable. Oh, let me guess. Well, we don't want to talk about the Epstein file, so we're going to go ahead and send y'all back home. Who did that? Just saying. We need a change. We need a change. We need fresh blood. We need new ideas. And liberals, we got to fight back. If you green or whatever, GOPs, y'all need to wake up because I don't think y'all understand what's happening. You thinking that you're hurting Democrats and you really hurting everybody.
Mhm,
You hurting your
definitely.
mama.
I think that this election really needs to be the red hats versus everyone else in the country. I think that we have to have a unifying message because the Democratic Party is going to have to be willing to accept more of the majority that really doesn't care as much about the partisan nature of some of these politics. And I think that Jay would probably agree, maybe the most important thing, and okay, removing fascism from government is very important. But there's actually one thing that is more important that we can and must accomplish in Congress, and it's very difficult. But the core of all of these issues relates very much to Citizens United. If we cannot accomplish meaningful campaign finance reform and political seats continue to be for sale, the next person could be even worse than this administration. And we know as long as politics is being purchased, then the people with all of the money are going to direct the policy. And it's destroying this country. If we look at post World War II America, look at our economics, look how our middle class surged and turned America into the nation that we know and love so much. If we don't look back to what we did back then and admit to ourselves, listen, there's a few things I like about Ronald Reagan. But supply side economics just did not turn out to work. It doesn't work. Look at your ground level employees at Amazon versus Jeff Bezos. And we all know a lot of this money is leaving the country because the more damage people like Donald Trump do to the institutions and the economy in the United States, the more that encourages global investment elsewhere because investors pay attention to the court system, the rule of law. It's a very important factor for a healthy economy. And this administration has thrown a wrench in so many important functions of both our government and our economy.
Yep, you bring up a good point, and it's worth mentioning that it's not just our domestic economy, but the fact that we have BRICS nations now actively looking to remove the dollar as the world reserve currency. A lot of people don't really understand what that means when it happens, and it is going to happen. Um, right now, we're on this tear. We can print our way out of just about any economic
Right.
situation. And we have been using our dollar as the world reserve currency as a form of economic terrorism across the world. And people are fed up with it. Instead of having free trade and working on unilateral agreements where everybody benefits, we've been strong arming the rest of the world. And so you get these BRICS nations that are saying we're gonna dump the dollar. When that happens and we can no longer print our way out of a problem, um, you look at what happened in Venezuela with hyperinflation when their currency crashed. We're looking at the same thing, and for people to not be talking about that in Washington and taking steps to make sure that that does not happen, it's just mind-boggling. But I also see that so many of our top 1%, right? Um, they're making plans. They're buying villas, they're buying islands, they're buying bunkers, they're doing all of these things to make sure that they can weather that storm. But the rest of us are going to be left holding the bag if or when BRICS is successful in replacing the U.S. dollar. So it goes well beyond just domestic policy and domestic economics, right? Like it or not, we are part of a global stage, and we have to start acting like it.
You, you know, it's interesting, Jay, because I've done a deep dive recently. I didn't mean to step on you there,
No, no, you're good.
Stephanie. You're going to say
No,
something,
yeah.
but you made me think because I've done a deep dive recently with some economists talking about monetary policy and looking for some good solutions, right?
Mhm.
And what I realize and I have learned is that essentially what we have leading this country is the Trump administration, which has the Heritage Foundation, people like that behind it. Then you have the tech bros and a few rogue billionaires out there that are supporting it. And then their other partners are Congress and Wall Street because they're all in it together. Our monetary policy that just continues pumping, which is what you're talking about. It's like if we were in a partnership in a business and then you just kept issuing yourself more shares and more shares and more shares and more shares. That's what we're doing to our partners around the world when we look at currency. And it's really important to understand that Wall Street gets rich off of the volatility that we see in the market from the creation of all of these treasury bonds and pouring this debt into the
Exactly.
economy for the world to consume the debt, trade on the debt, trade on the debt. Now, what that does is it causes inflation, what causes asset prices to go up. The ultra wealthy are completely asset based. So that makes the prices of their goods go up. But poor people are cash based, and inflation makes the power of their dollar go down. So, if we had good fiscal policy like conservatives used to stand for, right, instead of this big, beautiful betrayal, if we had good fiscal policy, and we're marching back toward a balanced budget, which I believe in. I don't think it's smart to spend into oblivion this way. Then the volatility would go down. We would see inflation slow. You could even see deflationary actions, which would make life so much easier for regular people. And you would see interest rates come down. And they should come down at that point. So now People have easy access to money. Small business can borrow money. People can buy a home. Their money goes further. And the ultra wealthy take a little hit on their billions in assets. That's the kind of leadership that we've got to create in this country.
Yep.
TJ, I'm going to say this. This is the first time that I've had a candidate come in there and break it down like it's peanut butter and jelly. And that's what we need. We need to quit trying to feed people steak and they still on milk. You
Yeah.
know, we need to break it down so the people can understand exactly what you're talking about. I picked that up. Of course, I know it, but I picked that up because I'm like, man, that is true. It's the poor people are the ones with the cash value, and most rich people, they're not cash rich, they're asset rich.
Right.
And I'm like to say we need to know the difference. We need to
Yeah.
definitely understand that, and I appreciate you coming up there here and saying it like that, and my
You bet.
listeners too.
Sure.
Jay Gory, what you got to say on that? I know you got something to say.
So that entire subject about monetary policy, right? It could be a mile wide and a mile deep. But at the end of the day, we need the ultra wealthy to pay their fair share. That's it's almost oversimplifying it, right? We need people that are making the most money to start paying their fair share.
Yeah. Definitely. And so related to that, if we study the post World War II economy, are you still there, Stephanie? You got me? If we
Oh,
study the post World War II economy, the highest income tax brackets were like 91% for a while, and they came down to 70%. And they stayed at that until a point in America in the early to mid 70s where the wealth disparity was the smallest in all of history. We had spent the 20th century marching away from the Gilded Age, thanks to people like Teddy Roosevelt. And now, unfortunately, and it seems like COVID just accelerated this so much, we are
yes.
very quickly finding ourselves back in a new Gilded Age. And it's very concerning.
Yep.
Well, we got some comments on here. Comment came in and said 1% have a strategy to invest outside the US, which is true. And then we need a balanced budget. We definitely need a balanced budget because how many times are we gonna keep letting the cap go to the ceiling? When is the ceiling is the ceiling? We our great grandkids, they're gonna owe and they're never gonna be out of this hole and we just keep putting them in and putting them in and putting them in. Something gotta stop. We gotta have a balance there. So I agree with you.
The people in power, they don't care about that. I work in Washington. You can tell why the people who are there, why they're there. Some of them are there for good reasons. A lot of them are not. It's very easy. I mean, no matter what your belief system is, you judge a tree by its fruit. And so we
Mhm.
know what these people have been doing, and they're not there for the right reason, and they're just trying to take everything they can get on their way out. That's the feeling that I get. And like I wouldn't be surprised if we see Donald Trump over in Trump Tower, Moscow, living the rest of his life, just around the corner, because what do they care? They have so much money. They can take them and every damn person they know to another country. But that's one of the big reasons that I actually entered this race, is because I'm not the kind of person that's going to live well under an authoritarian regime. And I was looking at the cost to move my entire family and my circle to another country, and I thought, this is bullshit. Like, why do I have to move to another country when honestly, like Jay, I've done so much for this one. And I have a lot of kids. I have a big investment here. And I care about my state and my community and my country. And I think that now is the time that we have to round up people that are capable of fixing some of this crap, and we have to all work together better than any other time in history to fix what's going on there so that our kids will still have a voice, when they're old enough to be there.
Yeah, and one of the things that we absolutely need to look at when TJ and I both get to Washington, one of the first things that we have to look at is we have to put an end to insider stock trading. Um,
Yep.
Yes.
if you're a member of Congress or the House of Representatives, you're there to do the people's work, not to take the people's money. And so um, the fact that we even have to make that an issue speaks to the corruption that exists in Washington. We hear all this talking point about, oh, drain the swamp. Um, I don't know about draining the swamp, but we definitely need to put an end to insider stock trading. Number one.
Yeah.
Number two, you should not move to Washington as a member of Congress and expect to spend your entire career there. And so, one of the things that I want to push for when I get there is term limits. I want to have that conversation. We need term limits. And not only do we need term limits, but do you know that Congress is fully vested after 5 years? They are
Mm.
fully vested into the retirement after 5 years.
Wow.
That's ridiculous. I have an idea. How about we just let you pay into a 401k like everyone else? Um, did you know that members of Congress pay $600 a year to have access to the office of the attending physician in the Capitol building? They basically have free health care on site for $600 a year. Um,
Wow.
we need to do away with that. You can get your health insurance like everyone else does, and if you don't like the health insurance that you have, then you can go to work and make healthcare a priority for all Americans, right? But going to Washington and having these sweetheart deals of healthcare and vesting and insider stock trading, and you just show up there and spend the rest of your life working for yourself instead of the people. All of that stuff needs to change, and that's why I'm going. But beyond that, we talk about the next generation, right? I'm
Mhm.
62 years old. I want to go to Washington and I want to kick in the doors necessary and pave the way for our next generation of young Democrats. And if you have any conversations with our young Democrats, and I'm talking sub 40 years old, right? 40 and below, especially at the college level.
Mhm.
These kids are amazing and they have a truly magnificent vision for their future.
Right.
The thing that worries me though is I don't know how a late 20s or early 30s individual takes on someone like Pete Sessions, right? They just don't have the lived experiences to go toe to toe. I do. So what I'm hoping to do is let me get to Washington, let me clear a path, and then let me step aside. And I have already vowed that my entire staff is going to be young Democrats. That it is going to be the young generation. I want to be able to set them up for success and then step aside and be amazed at the work that they're doing. So there's a lot of things we need to fix, and that's why I'm throwing my hat into the race.
I- Hey, you know what? I totally agree with you on that. And you got two comments. TJ, don't let me see. Hold on, let me go back to it. There's several that dropped. They said they don't care, don't move. Wait a minute. Let me reread that. They don't care. Don't move. You are the change we need for the children today. TJ, so don't go anywhere. Um, and also, um, someone said, I agree with the term limits. The basically on welfare, but don't want to reach down to pull the other one up. Uh, you know what? I agree. I agree. They are
Yeah.
on welfare because I'm like, when you when you say, "Oh, we want to find that money," well, you got the money right there in D.C. You need to go look in these people' bank accounts and see what they got.
You know,
Um,
Jay, what I've realized running against an incumbent is that you have to really screw up to get voted out as an
Right.
incumbent because, they raise all this campaign money, but in their official capacity, they're using government money to go out there and campaign every damn
Every
day.
day. Right.
So it's like there's a lot to be up against, but I think we're seeing a change in America. And by the way, I have signed on to the U.S. term limits pledge. I agree with term limits, either 3 or 4 in the House and 2 in the Senate. I also agree with age limits, but my age limits will probably give Jay at least 2 or 3 terms in the House so he can fix things. But we don't need people that are 85 in Congress. I believe it's a very demanding job, and also, a lot of the old and wealthy people in Congress, they're just massively out of touch with America. Now, Jay, I'm an entrepreneur. I built some wealth for myself and my family. I'm nowhere close to a billionaire, anything like that whatsoever. But I grew up poor. I grew up on the streets since I was 15 years old, went in the Marine Corps when I was 17 years old, didn't have any money in my life until I was in my 30s. So I can connect with everybody, but I'm never going to forget where I came from. And I'm able to engage with people, like even in urban communities and things like that, because of the way that I personally came up on the streets in a really bad part of town. And by the time I was going to the Marine Corps at 17, part of the reason after 9/11 was because all my friends were already going to prison. And so I've gotten to watch this road of disenfranchisement and putting people in a system and keeping them in a system. And even today, you've got 40,000 people across America that are separated from their family over marijuana.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, wait a minute. We got another comment. Oh, bring the chest on in, y'all. Jenny said both of y'all have been called to serve our nation then and now. So, you know what? I'm going to do this for you, Jenny.
I promise both of us look at this the same way. This is like nonprofit work. Like I'm not in this at all for the congressional salary. I will probably donate a big portion of it and spend the rest on clothes and shoes. But I you know, I look at this as more of the nonprofit work that I've been doing for a lot of my life that I've done mostly full time for like the last 2 years,
Mhm.
because the impact that I've been able to have in Washington has been really crappy so far. And it's because I was up against such powerful lobbyists with such deep pockets that don't care about people, they only care about profit. And I said to myself, you know what? This is the best way for me to serve because I really can have a huge impact, not just on Texas, not just on the country, but we realize now on the whole world because we are a world leader and we are looking really, really rough these days in comparison with a lot of our allies.
We are. We are. I agree with you on that. I was telling somebody the other day, I said, with Putin coming over here on our land, I got a lot of things I could say about that, but I won't. But there's no way that man should have been allowed to come to our country. He shouldn't have put a corn over here. And you looking over at Alaska like you're trying to take it back. He made several references about Alaska. So what? You gonna do something about Alaska? You gonna try to take Alaska back from us? That ain't happening. That's not going to happen. So I agree with you. And when I ran for office last year, I signed the term limit as well. I do believe that there should be some form of term limit. I don't agree with people sitting up here having inside information where they can go and buy all this stock up and then the other people are not able to go do so. So I'm like, if Martha Stewart had to go to jail, why are you not going to jail?
Exactly.
Exactly. Exactly.
Let's be right and let's be fair across the board. And when you said age limit, yeah, we need some age limit out there. We definitely need to have some age limit out there
Yeah. And
because you know
as the old guy in the room, I absolutely agree with that. Right? We do need age limits, um, but I think that if we have the term limits, the age limits kind of self-regulates, right? Um,
Yeah.
because I think everybody in the room here would agree that Bernie Sanders, he is still vital in this fight against the MAGAs and the wealth inequity that exists in this nation, right? So what would age limits do for someone like Bernie, right? So we do need some of that elder statesmen that are doing the job of the people, right? Uh,
Mhm.
that's why I'm very much interested in pushing for term limits. Don't know what that looks like yet. Is it, like TJ was saying, is it 2 terms? Is it 3 terms? Um, but there needs to be a limit. Absolutely. The other thing we need to do is we need to get rid of lobbyists and corporate influence, right? Um,
Right.
you look at, and this goes both sides of the aisle, unfortunately. You look at an organization like APAC.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
They have 370 elected officials prominently featured on their website. Look at
Mhm.
who we support and look at who we back. Um, if you're taking money from APAC, you lose your ability to say that you are concerned about starving children, that you
Right.
are concerned about women and children's rights, um, that you are for peace. You don't get to say that if you're on APAC's rolls. Just
Mhm.
so we need to have that conversation as well. And then you look at the NRA, and something that slid through that a lot of people don't realize is that in this big bogus bill, the NRA was able to put in the removal of all restrictions on suppressors, otherwise known as silencers. So now anybody with a pulse and $50 can buy a gun, and with another $50 they can buy a silencer. Why
Yeah.
do we need silencers on the streets or in the streets of America? Why do we need that? The NRA will tell you, well, it's hearing protection, and that's
Well, whose protection?
hearing protection. Yeah, no, it's bullshit.
Hmm.
At least today, when a gunshot rings out, people in a pretty wide circle can hear that and start running. With a
Right.
silencer, think about how many shots somebody that means to do bad things can unload before people realize that there's a problem. This is just horrific legislation, and it should have never passed. It should have never been allowed. But
Mhm.
APAC money or NRA money talks, right? And we haven't
Right.
even talked about bump stocks and high capacity magazines and all of the other things. Um, we need to have that conversation about common sense gun laws, and I am going to do it. And I get a lot of pushback. Oh, you're a bleeding heart liberal, and you're coming to take our guns. Let me stop you right there because I own weapons. I own guns, and
I
I
don't think you understand Democrats. A lot of Democrats, liberal people do have weapons. We probably got more than you have.
yeah. But people, oh no, you're just coming to take guns. No, I'm not. I'm coming to say that we need universal background checks. I'm coming to say that we need red flag laws. And with what happened in Austin, Texas, a week and a half ago,
Hmm.
and I posted on this too, right? The day before school started in mass across Texas, a 4-year-old girl was shot to death in a Target parking lot. And the only thing I could think of is that on that first day of school, there was a chair somewhere in a classroom in a school in Austin, Texas, that was empty. And the person that pulled the trigger had at least 11 arrests, several of them for domestic violence, and had a well documented history of mental health issues. Now, you tell me how a red flag law or a universal background check wouldn't have caught that. It absolutely would have. And so, how many more people do we have to see lose their lives to gun violence so that somebody can own an arsenal that they don't need, right? It's just,
Right.
it's ridiculous. But no, I'm not coming to take away guns, but I am coming to say that we need to have some common sense gun legislation that makes sure that the people that have no business being around a weapon do not have access to a weapon.
I think common sense legislation is well needed all across the country, right?
Yeah.
But one thing that I'm disappointed with is that we haven't invested more in our youth, because I believe that the mental and emotional health of our children is the responsibility of all of us. And so I'm the type of person that doesn't like to treat symptoms. I want to
Mhm.
figure out what is the core cause of the issue that we are seeing in society. And I'll tell you, my opinion is trauma and dysregulation. When people are in a dysregulated state, they do crazy, stupid things. And in
Yep.
certain other cultures, kids are taught at a very young age to breathe and to regulate their nervous systems, to calm themselves down. But the religious fundamentalists, your evangelicals, have been afraid of anything that sounds like yoga or Eastern mysticism, and they've made our children suffer because of it, despite the fact that mental health professionals in America understand how to create happy, healthy, thriving children. And for some reason, not only has that not entered into national policy, but hell, we're trying to destroy national educational policy altogether. This is craziness. And on one more thing, if the political pendulum continues to swing back and forth so far, these programs that are going to take decades to come to fruition, these institutions that have been created over decades and centuries, they get destroyed. They become collateral damage of the political game. And let me tell you, there's good things about being business minded if you're there for the right reasons. And in business, a lot of people pivot and adapt quickly. Government has to be run differently. Government has to be run differently than a business.
I agree.
I
Yeah.
agree. We both agree.
And speaking of looking out for children, especially in public education, one of the things that I have written is something that I call the National Student Health Initiative, and it focuses on our children in school and K-12 education. They need to be fed. Um, we, we're kidding ourselves if we think that children are going to uh, have the most successful outcomes if they're showing up to school hungry. We do need counselors. We do need mental health services. We do need to support the teachers in the classroom. We do need to find innovative ways to put more teachers in the classroom. And one of the things that I am talking about is taking our veterans and a pipeline from military service to putting them in the classroom. Let's pay for that transition. Let's pay for that education and not have it go against their post 9/11 GI Bill, right? Allow those veterans to continue to use their GI Bill for something that they want to pursue because they've earned that benefit, right? But how many of our veterans come out of the service and say, I don't know what to do now. How can I re-engage? How can I be part of my community, right?
Exactly.
Let's get them in the classroom. Um, let's look for ways to make it easier for teachers to get the certifications so that they can be effective as a special education educator, right? Um,
Mhm.
why are we making teachers come out of pocket for things that go into the classroom, right? We do not support our teachers and we do not support our kids, and the kids see it, right? Um, so this National Student Health Initiative is something I really want to focus on when I get into Washington because I think it matters. We need to make that investment into our children. And not only do we invest in our children and invest in these programs, we invest upstream. When we make the investment upstream, the costs downstream are so far less than what we're paying now. We're paying reactionary fees all across the board. We're spending an order of magnitude more money fixing problems that we could have prevented had we decided that we need some social safety nets, that we need to be able to give people the supports that they need so that they can get an education, so that they can go out and become a productive member of society, right? So, um, Yeah, the system is completely backwards, and we need to fix that.
It really is. And Eugene says, yes, we have to invest in our youth, especially our young men now. Now, when you mention about military people going into the classrooms, now there's some military people that don't need to go there. I'm just going to keep it real. Some of them, I don't want an infantry guy teaching my grandchild.
Yeah.
But
Well,
Or a drill
the
section.
we
military
do.
does have like the Marine Corps, honor, courage, and commitment. It's about ethos. It's about unit cohesion. It's about other things that kids really should learn that are good
Yeah.
for kids to learn. And I think that our society undervalues our teachers and our police officers because I'm very passionate about criminal justice reform, but
Mhm.
one of the issues is the types of officers that are being hired out there. I've got a couple of interesting solutions for that problem. But number one, if we pay people better, we can get better candidates. And
Mhm.
like Jay said, I'm very close to someone who's a teacher, and she has to send out an Amazon wish list
Yep.
for the classroom every
Yeah.
year. And they don't make hardly anything, they don't make a lot of money. And who do we want teaching our kids? We want people that are well equipped, educated, qualified, and there for the right reasons. And a lot of people that would be there for the right reasons probably just can't financially afford to
Right.
go there and do that job.
Right.
That's true.
Yep.
Or they have to leave the country just to go do it. And that's really sad that we haven't really invested, especially the state of Texas. There is no reason why we should be number what 40, 47. I believe that we're almost at the bottom. How are we at the bottom? Because we got people like Greg Abbott that is running this country, well, running this state down to the ground, and he's listening to people that didn't graduate from college, number one, and got several 34 felonies and stuff on them. He's listening to people like that instead of listening to the people that actually put him in office. I'm quite sure there are some real GOPs that talked to him and told him, "Look, we don't need to do this." There has to be somebody up in there that shows some empathy and telling them, "Hey, maybe you not need to do that." But when you're being threatened by the monster at the White House, then what do? Either you
Stephanie,
do.
how does it make sense? Sorry, I didn't mean to
Go
step
ahead. Go
over you.
ahead.
How
Go
does it
ahead.
make sense that one of these students in South Lake Carroll ISD is getting twice as much money almost spent on them per year as the kid over in Stop Six? Now, out of these two kids, the one that needs more resources is the kid in Stop Six. Are you telling me if South Lake Carroll football team can't buy uniforms, that the booster club and the parents aren't going to come in and buy them? Come on. This makes no sense
Hey, I was a
whatsoever.
booster mom. Both of my sons played football. I was a booster mom, and you doing right. If they need an outfit or whatever they needed, uh, we the booster parents, we did what we had to do for those kids, and that's the same thing that needs to be happening over in Stop Six or
Yeah.
in South Dallas or
Well,
somewhere.
no. They should be redistributing the funds that are collected to fund
Yeah.
schools anyways, because of the marginal utility of money is a concept that Americans have got to understand. And what that means is that that extra $5,000 per student in Stop Six would
Mhm.
mean so much more than the $5,000 per student that you give to South Lake Carroll kids whose
But you're
parents
holding on
have.
to the money. We have the money to do that, but you're holding on to you sitting on it. We have a rainy day fund that's not going to where it's supposed to. Now you got five schools over in SD 12 that's shut
Broken
down
down.
because they're holding on to it. That makes no sense. And then what's going over in Keller is a hot mess over there too. So it's like that's why it's so important to get Jay Gordon and yourself and others in positions. We got to get y'all elected so that way we can change up and start doing right by our young people. Because forget my age group, because we done blew it. We literally just done blew it. Jay Gordon, we done blew it. Now we got to sit up here and fight for the people that's up under us. And you're right. The ones under 50 and under, we got to fight for them and make sure they have what they need. And people like Bernie Sanders, I think he would be a great asset in mentoring people. Have a group where you're mentoring, people so that way they know what to do. Because I know one thing, I never thought we would be entering in a hot mess like this before. Jenny, my kiddos attend a Title One school, and they ran out of copy paper before the end of the school year. Okay, so if you got kids in school, we normally have to have school supplies and be giving the kids the copier paper, toilet tissue, and the paper towels and wipes and everything. Why are we having to do that and we're paying taxes? That's something that we need y'all to fix when y'all get to Congress. We need y'all to fix those things, and we also got to get people that's in Austin that actually going to hold the governor to the fire. He
Well,
does. He needs to be held accountable.
we haven't even talked about how many districts in the state of Texas are now in a 4-day school week because they can't afford to go all 5 days.
The
We
hell, the electric bill is high. Yeah.
exactly. Um, and so, yeah, public education at the national level, there's a lot of work to be done. And to me, it is a priority because we're talking about our children, and our children are the future of this world, right? Um,
Right.
so, yeah, there's a lot of work to be done. I'm excited at the prospects that I may be able to stand alongside TJ up in Washington. Um, we can have some good conversations about how to right this ship.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm glad to
And
collaborate, and I think we should all have a very collaborative nature because we know some of the things that have to be done, and that we have really great ideas and strategies and good faith going in to figure those other things out together.
Right.
well, I definitely appreciate both of y'all coming on Let's Talk About Stuff today and spending your time with me and answering a lot of questions that a lot of people had and breaking it down like we're eating peanut butter and jelly. So I love that. I love that. So if y'all are on YouTube, because I see we got people in there, please make sure you subscribe, like, and share. We'll be back on next Wednesday at 7 p.m. You never know who's going to be the next guest. So, y'all, I love doing this part here. I'm going to give both of y'all 2 minutes to talk about yourself. What do you want the people to know about you? TJ, I'm going to let you go first.
Okay. Well, first of all, um, I'm just a regular person. I have common sense. I have empathy. I live in our communities. I'm not insulated and isolated like so many people in Washington, but I have the acumen and the experience and the life experience to understand the struggle of a lot of people in America. I had a business that I had just started when I was young that was completely destroyed by the BP oil spill down in Alabama. And I ended up getting nothing. I got shafted by FEMA. I was caught up in an issue with the DOD where a bunch of veterans sued, and they had treated me poorly on my medical discharge and had to later change it to a medical retirement because the military would rather buy bullets than take care of their troops. I have been on the other side of the coin on so many issues, and I've been on all sides, and that gives me some perspective. And because I approach every situation not like a zero sum game, I don't believe that in order for me to win, you have to lose. I believe that a rising tide lifts all boats. And that is my goal to build these coalitions going into Congress. So the moment that we get there, we can get started in riding this ship. And you guys can visit me at electtj.com. TJ or TJ Ware for Congress. TikTok's a big platform for me. Please connect with me and follow me on socials. I'm real involved, and I think that's what's going to help us win this election.
Well, thank you so much, TJ. Okay, up next we have Mr. Jay Gordon.
Well, first, I want to say, Steph, thank you so much for having us on. And the work that you do is important. This is an opportunity for us to reach people that we otherwise probably wouldn't get in front of. And so, never never underestimate the power of your platform and what you're doing for us. So, truly, thank you. Um, TJ Ware, that guy's the real deal, right? Forget about me. Let's get him in office as well, right? Let's do what we can to get him where he needs to be. Um, Look, I grew up in 1960s Detroit. Um, the race riots happened literally outside my front door. I grew up in a household where bigotry and hatred were that's how we lived. I was always embarrassed by it. That's why I changed my name in 2024 to Mitchell. I was part of white flight, so I understand what that looks like, and I understand the damage that can be done to kids when they grow up in an environment that is toxic and filled with bigotry and hate. So uh, we have a lot of work to heal this nation, right? Especially in our Black, Brown, and queer communities, and that's where I want to focus. I want to focus on fixing the things that I can fix, making sure that I am being a voice for those who do not have a voice or whose voice is continually silenced. My degree programs, human and social services was my undergrad. Liberal arts with concentrations in government, education, and cultural studies was my first master. And I'm currently working on a second master's in public health. All of that because what fills my cup is thinking that I can help others. And that's why I became a firefighter. That's why I'm a first responder. That's why when the floods hit Kerrville, I was down there, the next morning doing whatever I could to help out. Um, like TJ said, I'm just the guy next door, right? But I know what I can do if I get the opportunity to go to Washington. I can ask the tough questions. I can bring that drill sergeant if I need to, right? Um, we have work that needs to be done, and I'm going to go up there and get it done. So, Jay Gordon Mitchell for Congress. I'm on all of the socials. If you go to my socials and the things that I say resonate, all I ask is that you please share that out there. If something that I talk about doesn't resonate or you have questions, please reach out. I am an open book. I will answer your questions. We can have an open and honest conversation about any topic. And I am not the smartest guy in the room, but I will surround myself with people that I trust, people I believe in, and people that have demonstrated their integrity. And so that's what I want to bring to Washington. So again, Steph, thank you so much for having us.
Y'all are so welcome, and that's one of the reasons why I came up with this idea of having Let's Talk About It and Politic Wednesday, because I remember when I ran for the very first time how hard it was to get to so many people. And I'm like, wait a minute, I have a platform here. Let me reach out and help these other candidates, reach out to people that they can reach out to because, you have life. You have an everyday life. We go to work and everything else, and you still trying to serve the people. And I just want to say thank y'all so very much for coming on here, TJ. Man, I see a future with you. I really do. You're a delight. Man, when you sat up there and said that you won't forget where you came from, if so many other people will remember, don't forget where you came from because you keep how you go up is how you go down. And I see you keep going up, sir. I really do. Who knows? We might be Jay Gordon, we might be talking to the next governor. You just never know. We
You
need a
guys are
change.
great. Thank y'all so much. And y'all have a super blessed day.
Yeah. Listen, I love my youth. I love my youth. I love my young people because y'all just giving me energy. You know, I look like I'm 20 something. Shut up. But I love my youth, and I just love having candidates on here, so that way you have an opportunity to say what you want to say and be comfortable and not be having a flashlight in your face saying, "Hey, y'all, 2 minutes, say what you got to say," and people supposed to know you. Y'all, I really appreciate you coming on here. So
Awesome.
I
Well,
wish y'all luck. And listen, 2026 is right around the corner, and I want to make sure that we bring y'all back on here again. I love having y'all on here. It was great talk, and we'll have to bring you back on here. And for y'all, my guests out there in the world, thank y'all for tuning in to Let's Talk About Stuff. And we'll be back on next Wednesday at 7 p.m. And my co host, Dale, he's out there in Carrollton doing his thing, but he'll be back. So see y'all next week. Have a good one. We're out.
uh,